Who's ready for something spooky? Lovely ladies and gentlemen, viewers, I have for you 3 scary stories written by myself and my fiance. Listen closely, and I hope you enjoy. And now, the next story. This one is titled Adrian. Adrian sat across from me at the dinner table, poking away at his pork chops and green beans with a side of mashed potatoes. He was smiling wide as he ate, listening attentively to the conversations that were happening between my mother and my sister. The smell of pork chops and mashed potatoes kept drawing my attention, wanting me to look down and snarf down every bit of them. But I couldn't afford to. I had to watch Adrian, my brother. I couldn't let him out of my sight. Whatever Adrian is, he couldn't be my brother. I don't have a brother. And yet, here he sat, like there wasn't a care in the world. He used his knife in his left hand and his fork in his right, holding it like any of us would. I kept watching, hoping that maybe there'd be something that he'd slip up with. But there was nothing. He just kept cutting off pieces of pork chop and sticking them in his mouth before chewing.
So, how are things at home? Things at school, Adrian? Been passing all your classes?
My father asked as he poured himself another glass of water. Adrian never went to school because Adrian doesn't exist. So while he's not failing his classes, he shouldn't be passing them either.
The same as always.
Adrian said as he picked up the pitcher and poured water for himself as well. I watched as the pitcher poured, as the water poured from the pitcher to the glass, losing the proper amount of water.
Miss Venti has been really cracking down hard on the tests lately, and her lectures are so boring.
I warned you about it, my sister said, pointing a green bean on the end of her fork at Adrian. My sister was now in her 3rd year of college and was majoring in business. She had these big, elaborate plans about making it big in a small town by building up some small business into a national brand. My parents always supported her. I thought her dreams were a bit lofty. Adrian said that he supported her and hoped that she could make it big to help him pay for college. My sister laughed that suggestion off as a joke, and they both laughed.
Well, I think she remembers you because it seems like she has it out for me,
Adrian said, wadding up a paper towel and tossing it at her. My sister laughed as she failed to block the ball, hitting her in the face. She went to throw it back at Adrian when my mother reached her hand out and put it in front of her. Now that's enough. No fighting at the dinner table, okay?
Okay.
Both Adrian and my sister's shoulders relaxed as they leaned back into their chairs and went back to their food. Now, how have things been for you? You've been quiet.
Yeah. What's new with you? Are your classes going well?
Adrian asked, sipping his water. I watched his lips, hoping to see a slight hint of a smirk or something, as if hiding behind the clear glass and clear liquid could hide his pride. But he just sipped like normal and set his cup down.
Passing all your tests?
Yeah, I said, picking up a scoop of mashed potatoes with my fork. I could feel the strain in my eyes. I was trying my hardest not to blink, worried that if I did, I would miss something, or that Adrian would take the opportunity to do something. I didn't know what. but I wouldn't let it happen. The pain in my eyes was strong, but I mustered up the will to hold back the natural urge. Everything's going well, Adrian.
That's awesome. Knew I wouldn't have to worry about either of my big sisters.
I had to restrain myself from snapping my fork as he said that last bit. He said it like it was normal, like there weren't any issues with him saying
You should keep worrying about yourself. Mrs. Vance's midterms are hell. You better be studying,
my sister said between bites of pork chop.
Come on now, don't talk with your mouth full,
my father said after swallowing a bite.
It's rude and gross.
Sorry, she said, holding her fist to her mouth before swallowing. Bad habits die hard, you know.
Oh, I know, Adrian said with a laugh. Remember that time at the ski resort and you were just so excited to talk about that taxidermy bear in the lobby that you got french fries all over Mom?
Everyone laughed as they remembered that. I vividly remember that because I was there. Adrian was not. Adrian doesn't exist. Adrian didn't exist. She got so mad because it was so hard to wipe things off when you were wearing those huge gloves, my sister said, failing to control her laughter. They made such a mess, but they were warm, my mother said, smiling and rolling her eyes.
We should go back to that resort sometime, maybe for a Christmas break,
Adrian suggested, turning towards my father.
Depends on how well your grades are,
my father said, wiping some gravy from his chin.
Money's been tight this year.
My father's been off and on odd jobs this year after getting laid off from his office job back in February. On the one hand, he didn't come home exhausted and frustrated all the time. On the other hand, we had to tighten up our belts a little and turn down things we normally would have done. We even had to do a staycation this year instead of going to the beach like we always did. Just the four of us. Only the four of us. There are only four of us. Then I guess it's time I share some of my good news. I was going to save this for dessert, but now's as good a time as any, my mother said as she pulled out her phone. She swiped a few times before turning the screen to us, showing an acceptance email to an art gallery. What? No way! Mom, you got in? My sister exclaimed, a little breathless. Yep. My mother's smile stretched practically from ear to ear. All the hard work and networking finally paid off. I'm going to have several of my art pieces in a gallery, up and up for auction at the same time.
Oh, congratulations, honey.
My father clapped first, then my sister, then Adrian, and then, finally, me. My mother had been trying for so long. Now her pieces will hang on someone else's walls. I always appreciated her art style, but I did get annoyed by how often she would ask us to pose for her. My sister didn't quite get it, but was always willing to try and help my mother sell her art. Now, the gallery is in January. I hope that you'll all be able to come and see it, but I know that you all might be busy with schoolwork, so if you can't, it's all right, my mother said, putting away her phone. Nonsense, my sister said. Of course I'm going to be there. Who else is going to help you haggle a good deal for your artwork? My sister chuckled like she was about to be the next big dog selling penny stocks on Wall Street.
That's right, Adrian said,
as he finished up the last of his meal.
I'll definitely make sure that I'm going to be there. Nothing could stop me.
Adrian turned to me, his gaze practically staring into my soul. I couldn't help but gulp as he looked. He was smiling, and it almost looked genuine. But I have to remind myself that it couldn't be.
What about you? Don't you have that, what was it, slavery history meetup thing that day?
Slavic. It's Slavic history, I corrected Adrian. And for something as important as this, I will find a way to be there.
Right, Slavic. That's what it was,
Adrian said with a chuckle. A meat? What kind of meat? My mother asked. It was only natural that she would ask me. I hadn't told anyone about it yet. It's a small gathering of scholars from around the country, I said, trying not to make a big deal out of it. They'll understand if I can't make it. Dear, you should go. It's not every day that you get to meet up with your academic peers like that. My mom always encouraged my interests, but I wanted to be there to support her. I waved her suggestion off with a shake of my head.
Honey, of course we're all gonna be there for you,
My father said, finishing up his plate as well.
Now, this is a cause to celebrate. I think I heard you mention something about dessert.
My mother laughed a little before standing up. Yes, I have a freshly baked key lime pie. Once everyone is finished, I'll get to it. Adrian, my father, and my mother all turned their heads towards me and my sister, who was still finishing up our plates.
Key lime pie? Don't have to tell me twice.
My sister shoveled the rest of the scraps onto on her plate into her mouth. I still had quite a bit left on my plate. No way I was going to be able to finish it as fast as she did. Still, I ate as fast as I could, but knowing that everyone was waiting on me to finish, I could feel the judgment weighing on me. The only way I was going to be able to finish reasonably quick was if I looked down at the food, and if I was looking at the food, I wasn't looking at Adrian. Was the hurried and excited looks of my family enough to make me turn away from Adrian, to let him out of my gaze? I bit my lower lip and, against all my better judgment, looked down at my food. I think that my mother and sister and father all talked about something as I ate. It didn't quite matter to me at the moment. All I could hear was the clinking of my utensils against my plate. I couldn't hear Adrian talking, or moving, or doing anything. There wasn't anything that told me he was still there, but nothing that told me he was doing anything either. I knew we were at the dinner table. I knew that the chairs squeaked loudly if anyone were to move them in the slightest, so I would have been able to tell. He was just there. Before I knew it, I finished my plate, and as I did, a sinking feeling formed in my gut. I wanted to look up. I wanted to see Adrian and know that he was still there. If he was still there, and at the same time, what would it mean if he was still there? My rationality still hadn't fully dismissed him being a very vivid hallucination, but my rationality also said that I didn't have a brother. I don't have a brother. There are only four of us. And yet, when I looked up from my plate and handed it over to my mother, there he was, smiling and sitting there at the table like nothing was wrong.
All right, she's finally finished.
Adrian cheered.
Now it's time for pie.
My sister and father cheered as my mother got up from the table and brought all the dishes and utensils to the sink. I could hear my mother going over to the oven to take out the pie. The oven opening filled the air with the scent of lime, but I couldn't turn to see it yet. My eyes were trained on Adrian. He was still there, smiling with excitement. My mother set the pie down in the middle of the table. She brought over a large knife and began to slice the pie up into 8 slices. Then she walked back to get small plates and distribute them out to everyone. Carefully, she put a slice out before everyone, then sat back down. All right, dig in and enjoy. My sister nearly inhaled her slice, stopping only because she stuffed too much in her mouth at the first bite, and having to take a bit of time to compose herself. My father sliced into his pie, humming happily at the delicious sweetness. I poked at my plate a few times, unable to find the slice as I was staring at Adrian. Adrian calmly picked up his fork and carved away at his slice. He held his fork like any other person would. Or at least, that's how I think a normal person would hold their fork. I never paid much attention to how a person held and used their forks before. I never had a reason to. As my fork finally found the pie slice, I brought it up to my mouth, only to feel the bit that I did scoop up fall off the fork and hit the ground. In a brief moment, I looked down at the bit of pie and debated about cleaning it up with a paper towel. It was the right thing to do, and my mother worked so hard on this pie. Leaving it on the floor would be a clear sign of disrespect, both to her food and to this household. A part of me hoped that no one else saw that and I could just get to it later. But as that thought came into my mind, Adrian reached across the table and handed me a paper towel.
Whoops, saw you drop that. Here you go.
His smile was so innocent, like a child reaching out to help someone who fell down. It curled up my insides. Not only did he see me drop it, but now everyone else at the table knew I dropped some. Was it all planned? Did he do something to make me drop it onto the floor? Was there something he was going to do when I was looking down at the floor? Thanks, I said, trying my best to sound sincere. I took the paper towel that he offered and put my fork onto the plate. All I could do was hope that I was quick. I bent down and grabbed at the fallen bit of pie. A squeak. I saw him stand up, and his chair moved and squeaked. He was doing something. I hit my head on the table as I bolted upright to catch him in the act. Aha! I shouted, pointing over at Adrian with the hand with the paper towel while holding the back of my head with the other. Adrian was simply standing upright a little bit, cutting himself another slice of pie. His plate was bare, minus a few crumbs and a bit of cream filling. My breath was heavy as I panted, the adrenaline still pumping through my veins. My sister, my mother, and my father all turned towards me, staring and trying to understand what just happened.
You all right?
My father leaned over and rubbed the back of my head.
That sounded like it hurt.
I could feel all of their gazes on me. My heart was pumping into my ears as I burned from the redness. I cleared my throat and tried to compose myself. The bit of pie was just in a weird spot, but I got it, I said, wadding up the paper towel and putting it on the table. I adjusted myself back into my chair and scooted back into place. "Dear, you need to be careful," my mother said with concern on her face. "I've hit my head a few times cleaning under there, and it's none too pleasant." "I'm fine," I said, taking a breath and picking up my fork. Adrian picked up another piece of pie and sat back down, his chair squeaking as he pulled it back in.
"Well, make sure the pie goes into your mouth,"
Adrian said, opening his mouth wide and pointing his fork to it.
"Mom worked really hard on this, and I'd hate for it to go to waste. It's absolutely delicious."
"Right. I'll be sure to next time," I said, picking up another scoop of pie slice. This time I watched it go into my mouth. He wasn't lying. The pie was absolutely delicious. The 5 of us continued to eat, the air filled with the sounds of forks clinking and my sister's aggressive eating. Adrian just ate like normal, not a care in the world besides the pie that was in front of him. Before long, the entire pie had been finished. My mother and I had one slice. The rest each had a second. My father stood up from the table.
"Well, now, that was a delicious dinner. Shall we finish off the night with some TV?"
"Like, I got dibs on the remote first!" My sister dashed out of her chair, rushing towards the living room.
"No fair!"
Adrian shouted as he got up from the table and ran after her. I was about to sprint as well, not wanting to let Adrian out of my sight, when my mother called out to me, "Dear, can you help me with the dishes, please?" She started to gather up all the dishes from the table.
"Go help your mom,"
my father said as he stood up from the table, passing his plate to my mother.
"I'll make sure that you get the second choice for the TV."
He smiled at me warmly. All I could do was feign a smile back at him. "Okay, Dad," I said, trying to fight back the terror sitting next to the pie and pork in my stomach. He left the room, following where Adrian and my sister went. I walked over to the kitchen with my mother. She scrubbed the dishes as I rubbed them dry. Neither of us said anything as we cleaned the dishes. I kept glancing from the dishes in my hand to the entrance to the living room, straining my ears to hear anything, but all I could hear was the sounds of the dishes and the ambient background of the TV. "Dear, you are all right? You seem distracted tonight and a little tense," my mother said, pulling my attention. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "I'm fine, Mom." I pulled together my strength to give her a smile. I had hoped it reassured her, but I could see past it. She shook her head. "I'm your mother. You know that you can tell me anything. If something's on your mind, just say it." I bit my lip before taking a deep breath. If I told her, I would just sound insane. She wouldn't believe me. "It's just school stress and my head," I lied to her. "Things have just been really confusing lately, and to add on to it, my head just really hurts from hitting the table. That's all." "Well, thank you for being honest with me," she said as she opened up the freezer and pulled out a bag of frozen peas. She wrapped it up in paper towels before handing it to me. "But I know you're one of the smart ones. No matter what happens, you'll be able to get through it. And even if you can't, you've got your family with you." She handed over the utensils and dish from the pie. "All right, just finish up drying these last ones, and then you're finished and can come join us for TV time." "Thanks, Mom," I said as I gave her a hug. She hugged me back, and that warmth filled my heart. Then she let go and headed off to the living room. I balanced the bag of peas on my head where I had hid it so that I could use both hands to finish drying the dishes. I wiped off the forks and the inside of the pie dish and put them away. Then I picked up the knife used to slice the pie. I turned my gaze over to the living room where my family was, where Adrian was. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room. Ah, there she is, my sister said excitedly. It's not TV time without the whole family together.
Yeah,
My father chuckled.
there's a spot here next to your brother. Take a seat.
I sat down next to Adrian, one hand holding the bag of peas, the other on the handle of the knife in my pocket. Gladly. That is the end of Adrian. Those were the 3 stories that I have for you. So, we're going to end the stream. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye, Anara.